I'm really grateful to have you here tonight. So just a little bit personal before I jump into questions. For me, when I was in program, Wednesday, for whatever reason, was my hardest day. I think Tuesday, as you guys are experiencing right now, Tuesday's a long day. I would come in halfway through the week. We weren't doing experientials on Thursday, so it was like, and Wednesdays were just tough. I was dysregulated a lot on Wednesdays. Wagner's group at the time was always Wednesday afternoon. And the way you showed up every week to that group with so much joy, and you created a space where you allowed me to be dysregulated. You didn't try to fix me, or you didn't try to, you just allowed me you met me where I was at. And I'm really grateful for that. It really made a difference for me in programming. And you're someone that I hold in high regard. I have a lot of respect for. And one thing I love about Wagner is his humility. He's been so nervous to share. And I'm just like, dude, he's just such a wealth of wisdom and experience and love and care. And that's what I love about him, though. He doesn't carry himself as like, I got all the answers, which is why I would encourage you as a fellow brother to lean in tonight, because those are the people we should pay attention to. So would you help me welcome Michael Wagner tonight? Breathe. You're going to get through this. This is great. How many years has it been in sobriety for you at this point?
45 on August 25th of this year.
Guys, 45 years. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah, so start by just telling us a little bit of your journey. What led you into sobriety 45 years ago, almost 45 years ago?
You know, sorry, I'll get through this, and hopefully you will with me. I grew up in an alcoholic family, big time. My mom, my father, one of my sisters never recovered. The other sister died of ovarian cancer at 56. My mother's father was institutionalized for alcoholism. My uncle, it's all over my family. So I was pretty vulnerable long before I had any idea. We lived in a small town in Ohio, Sydney, Ohio. My father was very successful. He was the second generation. He and his brother were second generation operators of a business that was founded by his father, by my grandfather in 1891. They ran a foundry that made cooking utensils. The Wagner Manufacturing Company, imagine that. And I say this with truth and evidence that they were probably the finest cast iron and aluminum cooking utensils sold in the United States and abroad. So I grew up in a very successful family. Small town prominence. I had two older sisters, both very attractive, so they generated a lot of attention. Bree, I had a meeting with Bree a couple of weeks ago, and I said, where does my love for these guys come from? They're all strangers in the beginning. How's come I so care for them? And she said, it's the wounds that we share. It's the sadness we've known. That keeps us vulnerable. Well, without going into a lot of details, I have my resume in the sadness department. My mother was ultimately diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. There was a lot of violence in our home. One of my early memories was on a New Year's Eve. I was sleeping in the bedroom of my sister with my sister, and it was all this ruckus. We opened the door, and my mother had hit my father on the head with a vase. There was blood running down his face. Honestly, I can almost feel my sister's arm coming around me to try to protect me from that sight. It only got worse. Make a long story short, with lots of challenges in between. My mother collapsed one night. This was 10 years later. And I got her admitted into a psychiatric ward in Columbus through a doctor friend of mine. And when my dad and I went to see her the next day, she lunged at him. The nurses had to get her under control. I'm not trying to relive the agony of all this. I'm just trying to say, I know what it feels like. And after all these years of sobriety, and I don't want this to sound threatening, but part of the journey, I'm still working on it. I have a lot of evidence of why it's worth all the struggle. Maybe we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. But I want you to know, I honestly, and this is not unique to me, I genuinely want you to get well. I have my version of getting well. I don't know how that might look to you at the moment, or how it even feels to me. Mm-hmm. But I know what's possible. Mm-hmm. And I want you to have some courage, and I hope tonight I can share some of the rewards. Yeah. I brought this as a prop. Among my multiple incidences as an alcoholic, I broke my son's leg falling down the stairs when he was 10 months old. And I've kept this to remind me.
Wow.
And
wow.
About 5 years later, after his brother was born, drinking again, I fell down the steps with him, banged his head against the railing, had to take him to the hospital for stitches. So I have my experiences. I'm not fully forgiven myself for all that, but I've experienced what comes from recovery. I warn you, it's a long journey.
Well, we're grateful. You had a very successful career in investment banking and all that. I was just curious, like you now, this season of your life, you've just dedicated yourself to this, whether it's volunteer or whatever. I mean, you just have, this is your life now. This is your world, whether you worked at Cedar, or volunteered at Cedar, I should say, and now here at Valiant, you come in and invest these guys. I'm imagining that's just part of your journey of giving back and working that step. But man, we're
might
grateful.
Be a little generous. I started volunteering at Cedar because my wife, believe it or not, 57 years, and a couple of you have met her, I think, but she's still a doll. And she's even older than I am by a little bit.
And you remind her that every chance you get.
she looks about 50 years younger. But at any rate, she was volunteering at University of Colorado Hospital, and she said, they have a recovery program called Cedar. You should go check that out. And I thought, But I did, and there's an interesting story surrounding that. But I finally went to their volunteer office, and they said, sure, come to this orientation. And I'll tell you, I walked into Cedar. That Cedar, Mike Deneen helped build that program. And in the image that he created, it was one of the finest hospital-based recovery programs in the country. So here comes this guy from Ohio, and I walk into this setting with multiple doctors. Everybody has a master's degree at least. There are piles of nurses that are some of the most powerful and most impactful people I've met in this recovery experience. And frankly, I was pretty intimidated. There was a guy by the name of Tim Rumsey there who kind of put his arms around me and said, hey, let's get going. He became a sponsor, a really powerful sponsor for me that late. I mean, I was sober, 35 years or something at that point. And I gradually worked into it, went back to school, started the CAC thing, and ended up here finishing my CAS, Certified Addiction Specialist thing. It took a while. But it was honestly the hand of my higher power. We had lived in Fort Collins for 12 years before we moved here. We moved here because my daughter had our first grandchild. And so I wasn't exactly lost. I was okay, but I didn't have an agenda. So to find myself in this arena and really touched by the experience of you guys was really a gift. Believe me, it had nothing to do with me giving back. I'm not saying I did it selfishly, I didn't. But I didn't expect the impact it had on me.
Yeah. Well, we're grateful. However you got here, we're grateful you got here. So it's meaningful for us. I have kind of three kind of buckets of questions, and we'll see what we get to, because I would imagine these guys are going to have some questions for you too, if you're open to that.
Sure.
And you kind of touched on some of it, but I want to talk a little about the impact of your trauma and your healing, because that's a big part of your journey. I want to talk about the rewards of long-term sobriety, but I also wanted to talk about the role of your higher power, because that's a big part of your story as well. And
Yeah.
so if we can just if you're cool to just kind of dive into some of these things, thanks for sharing your part of your story with us. I mean, that's very powerful. I think anymore, I feel a sacredness around, and this is coming from someone who's spent a lot of his life avoiding pain, that when people invite us into the painful parts of their story, it feels, for lack of a better word, like holy. And what I mean by that is just like set apart, like sacred, like it's almost an honor to be invited into that side of people's story. And I felt that when you were sharing, it felt very sacred to me. So thank you for that. But I'm curious just about the role of healing in how you've kind of processed some of that pain, some of that trauma, or how you're continuing to process that.
Continuing is the truth. I mean, as I started to prepare for this, I went back and looked at all that, and it was very emotional. But I'll tell you, a pretty significant moment of healing occurred fairly recently. I have worked with a guy that used to be a therapist here. He was the clinical director, Shane. And we've done some of that FIS stuff, I mean, IFS, internal family systems, where you take a look at what Dr. Schwartz called your parts. That was really powerful for me. I got to know these parts that were the witnesses to these moments of trauma in my life. And I began to understand their role in my advanced age, that they were protecting me from that wound. They were saying, look, I got this, you carry on, and I'll just hold on to these memories and protect you from them. I told the guys in my group maybe last week that in the midst of this work we were doing, I heard this interview with Demi Moore, whatever, the actress, where she was sharing about some of the trauma she had experienced with her mother. And that at a moment in her life, fairly recently, and certainly as a consequence of treatment, she said she began to appreciate the fact that who she was very much influenced by her mother, good and bad. But that was, I'll tell you, as Tim, as you said a couple of weeks ago, addiction is part of me. You know, those wounds are part of me. And at any rate, Demi Moore said in this interview, she said, I all at once realized, I thought, how could my children have any compassion for me if I don't have any compassion for my mother? Shane, when I said that to Shane, he said, Mike, I'm not charging you for today. And this part of the work is done. That was a real breakthrough for me.
And how long ago was that? That was recently.
A month ago.
That's wild.
Maybe 2 months ago. Very recently. I don't, you know, you do this stuff. I haven't done very many, but you think the last thing you want to happen is for a guy sitting in the audience to say, if this is what it looks like after all these years, I'm out of here. And I don't want to generate that kind of feeling. But so that was the moment I needed, right? I couldn't remember all the good things about my mom. They were all occupied by those moments of chaos. All at once, she was present again in her whole self. When she was put on medication that calmed her down, she wasn't so much trouble anymore, but she wasn't herself anymore. The good part of her was all toned down. So all at once I could see her, as Demi Moore said, as the pure spirit that my mother entered this world as. That we all do. It wasn't her fault. And she also said, when she said, how can my kids have compassion on me if I have no compassion on her? She said, isn't that how we break the cycle? That's really powerful. I have to heal so that I don't pass that on to my kids and they pass it on to theirs. That's the truth. This injury goes from generation to generation, and I have a lot of documented history to prove it. So it's a slow process. It doesn't have to be as slow as it's been for me, but it's a slow process, but you really have to address it, because those wounds, though they are the source of our brotherhood, and in fact the source of our mutual community healing, we heal each other, you really have to look at them. You really need help. I needed help, and I didn't get it for a long time.
Yeah. How can we, for those of us that are in, like, you know, I'm under 3 years, I feel like early recovery still compared to, 45. So how, for those of us that are in early recovery, begin to deal with some of these trauma and be able to heal without feeling overwhelmed by it? Because it can seem like a lot, or it can seem like, even for you saying, hey, in 45 years into this, I'm still having these breakthroughs, which for me personally, when I hear you say that, like, if this is what sobriety looks like 45 years down the road for me, I'm all in. It doesn't scare me. This feels like, because what I desire more than anything is to be connected to myself, to what I'm feeling, to whatever. Like, that is my desire in life, is to be connected. And I feel that from you. I see that you're connected to that. But for those of us early on, how do we begin to start this healing and this process without feeling like, gosh, this is so overwhelming?
Hey, for me, it was therapy. In the beginning, I saw the same psychologist who became a very close friend, just as they were talking about all at once. We were just in conversation. They were talking about that in the meeting before this. But I went to a very good therapist every week for 3 years. I needed help, and I gradually came to appreciate that. So for one, don't think you can do it all by yourself. It's really not possible. If I say all the time, here we are in recovery in X number of days, and I've been in treatment this many times, and blah, blah, blah. If it were easy, we would have done it a long time ago. It just ain't easy. So, number one, do the work. Part of it is you need somebody that has enough professional experience to shield you from the overwhelm. You don't want to go back and relive all those. They open that wound. But you needn't be afraid of it either. It's over. It's past. I mean, Michael is very much into meditation, has a real sense of the power of learning how to be in the present. I'm not sure that's a very
That's helpful.
satisfying answer, but at this stage, don't mess with it. Get help, use it, and be patient.
That's good
Does that
advice.
help?
Very much so, because I think for someone like me, I don't know if anybody else can relate, but I want to just fix it. I want to get in and I want to heal it, fix it, move on, whatever, and it just often doesn't work that way. You have to be patient with it, and you have to kind of let it unfold and evolve, right? I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, but it's not like going into the engine of a car to repair it. It's not like that. I've got something I want to share with you that you don't get it yet, but this experience is a real gift. What I have grown into, I hesitate to say this with too much confidence, what I have grown to is so much grander than all the things I longed for early in my life. I was certain I couldn't be as good as my father from the time I was little. And then I flunked out of school over and over and got drunk a lot and crashed cars and did all that stuff. So I was a shit for a pretty long time. This is a huge gift. And I really don't know how to communicate this convincingly, but you should be grateful for being here. I am. I'm really grateful for being here. I mean, here right now, even as uncomfortable as this is, this is the most fulfilling part of my life, is being with you guys. That's the truth. When I was in college, in and out of college, I worked at a black boys club for a while. And I thought at one point, I really like this. I really enjoy working with these kids. I should do this. I should do this for a living. And I thought, I'll never make any money. So I became a stockbroker and didn't make very much money. So at any rate, I really mean it. I know how uncomfortable this is because it's uncomfortable for me right now, right? Because we're talking about serious stuff here. This is a huge gift. Don't mess with it. Jonathan knows. Dan knows. We grow almost despite ourselves to some extent. And now, you know something, I grew up as a Catholic, and we were a very devout Catholic family. And that was, I mean, I went to Catholic schools all through college and all that. But you are going to experience a higher power much closer to the reality of the majesty of that mystery than is easily available in church. And that's something you should really look forward to. When I look back at my life, there are so many incidences where that encounter was impossible without. I'll give you an example. One of the reasons I look forward to talking to you, Tim, is in the midst of the chaos of my college years, which went on for almost 10, I decided I should join the service. I mean, there was still the draft, so I was probably going to go anyway, but I thought, I'm going to the service. I'll grow up there. I'll get it together. And I had a friend at my favorite bar at Ohio State, the Varsity Club, who was several years older than I. He was African-American, black guy, Madison Scott. And I went to him and I said, Scotty, you're the ranking enlisted officer at Fort Hays, which was in Columbus at that time. I said, I think I should go to the service. Maybe that'd be good for me. Of course, I'm in a bar. and Scotty said, well, it worked for me. I went in after high school, and I had my master's in business, and you know, it all worked for me. So I went to I enlisted. I tried to enlist. I took the exam. I'm standing in my underwear in this room with all these half-naked kids, and their doctor comes out and puts your drawers down, and he looks at my spine and he says, you have a pilonidal cyst and you're ineligible for the draft. And I thought, shit, now what am I going to do? So I pulled my pants up, and believe this is before Vietnam was all heated up. You know, I wouldn't have been so brave had it been. But at any rate, I'd never reported that to my draft board. And a year later, I was called for the draft. In the meantime, I have met Ginny, my wife-to-be, and I'm back in school. And I'm starting to get a little bit together. I'm still drinking too much, but I'm getting a little bit of my life together. I go back to Fort Hays. I'm standing in the same room in my underwear. The same doctor comes out. I pull down my pants. He says, you have a pilonidal cyst. You are not eligible for the draft. And that was it. You tell me that isn't higher power? So here's the kicker of that story. About a year and a half ago, I'm in my favorite coffee shop. And there's this guy sitting there, and I'm curious about a book he's reading. I go over and sit down. I said, do you mind, could we talk for a minute? And he said, sure. I said, well, he said, where are you from? And I said, actually, I'm from Columbus, Ohio. He said, so am I. And out of nowhere, I said, is there any chance you would have known a Madison Scott? And he said, he's my father.
What?
You have so much to look forward to. You are not alone. I mean, it might feel like it, and I might be scared as hell about what's next, and the stuff I haven't admitted or reported that I'm still hiding, all that crap that's going on, and I have those too. But you have no idea what's coming. And I have another 50 examples Benedictine monk that showed up at exactly the most desperate time when I'm at St. Bede Academy in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. Let me just tell this story and then we'll go on. But so I arrive at the beginning of my senior year, and Father Richard, whom I've gotten to know and love, this great Benedictine monk who had spent his career as a chaplain in the army, he comes over to me and he says, Mike, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer it. And he said, were you drinking here last year? And I said, yes. And he said, if you had said no, I was sending you home. All my friends that I had drunk with, they all got thrown out. Father Richard said, the difference is, if I ask Mike the question, he'll tell the truth. And praise God, I did. Mm-hmm. So I got to finish. You tell me there's not a higher power at work someplace around here? And I have many more examples. I'm not kidding. And they go on all the time. Anyway.
Talk a little bit about just the, this is the last thing I'm going to ask, because I want you guys to ask questions, because, this is so good, Mike. Talk about some of the rewards. 45 years, some of the moments for you.
I really do want to try to communicate this so it looks like something to look forward to. You know? I mean, so.
Need your notes?
The son whose leg I broke when he was 10 months old, he was supposed to be here tonight. He's an absolute authority on Buddhism. He's a wonderful son. His mom and dad are getting old, and he's spending a lot of time with us, and he's a great guy. We ski together, we play pickleball together. He and Dan have become very close friends. So I didn't fuck him up. You got it? Yeah. I did for a while, but he got over it. His brother's been a huge success. He's with Boston Consulting in Bangkok. Married a gorgeous Thai girl who was named the #1 model in Thailand about 10 years ago. She's a real sweetheart. She is the essence of what happens if you live a life of meditation and service. She's really something. They have a son who's terrific, and I have a daughter whom the staff has met. She came to a staff meeting last summer, I think. She's a therapist. She's married to a physicist. They live in Maryland now, unfortunately. They were here in Denver when we moved here from Fort Collins. Are those adequate rewards? Yeah. I had a good career. You know, I thought about this driving over here tonight, that I was a stockbroker with Payne Weber, which was one of the premier firms at the time. And that's full of miracles. I had no business being hired by them. They got me to go back to school and finish because I couldn't start training unless I had a degree, and holy smoke. And I drank every night when I was in New York going through training. I used to say, you know that bar I referred to where I met Madison Scott? It was called the Varsity Club. I used to say, I've been on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange twice, but I've been on the floor of the Varsity Club 3 times. I'm 82, and I'm not going to last forever. I know that. Ginny and I are working on our plans. We're trying to figure out who's going to cremate us, getting stones in place. I mean, I'm clear about the reality of my age, but I'm in really good health at the moment. That's a gift, man. Yes, I like to say, matter of fact, Jill asked me once, how have you managed to stay sober so long? And I thought, that's a good question. And then out of my mouth, you guys have heard this before, but I said, well, I became worthy of taking very good care of myself. That's really the truth. But worthy, when you grow up with an abusive mom? I mean, worthy? Where did that come from? And it gradually, because I wasn't very open to being worthy for a long time. That's called shame. I finished college. I have an incredible group of friends. You. And others. I really mean that. It's intimidating to come here. You know, you think you're on this journey injured. Sort of. Yes. I know what that's like. But you've been handpicked. You're going to get well, and you're going to make a huge impact on your families, on each other. What rewards you want? I didn't get to win the lottery, but I made a fair amount of money. In the end of my career, not in the beginning. I started to tell you this. Do you know, when I was a stockbroker, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was at 1,000. In 1973, it went from 1,000 to 500. Try to make a living in that market. What is it now? 46,000? Patience, right? Index funds. you know all about this thing.
That's great.
Tim, sorry.
That's great.
But, damn, I'm all over the place.
Now, what's coming up for you guys? I know we're getting short on time, but questions?
Hey, I'd like to ask Mike, how do you forgive yourself? How have you learned to process that? Because I struggle with that every day.
That's a really good question. Well, you know, for one, I can linger. And I'll tell you a story. Maybe you've heard this, but this guy, Tim Rumsey, that meant so much to me at Cedar, when we were doing the steps, he said every night, 30 days, brush your teeth, look in the mirror, and say, I love you. So this is literally true. I'd brush my teeth, look in the mirror, and say, I love you, you asshole. It's not easy. You can linger in the despair of all those disappointments. I told you guys once, when I made amends with my mom, at one point I said, I'm sorry I've been such a disappointment. You know what she said? Nothing. Honestly, it's a spiritual thing. And I'm not talking about religion here. No disrespect to religion. But I need to get what it means to be a human being. That book, The Spirituality of Imperfection, you know, there's a great quote, and I've said it over and over to you guys, but Rabbi Zispa said, in the next life, they will not ask me, why were you not Moses? They will ask me, why were you not Zispa? Why were you not yourself? That's your gift.
Wow.
One of Joe's Rinpoches said, we have the freedom and the right and the power to choose how our precious life will be. Precious life. When did I ever view my life as precious? I've been recovering since I was 8. It's a powerful question. Part of it is through therapy where somebody can keep bringing you back to reality. Because if I linger in that, wallow in that regret, I'm going to stay there. I need somebody to help me lift me out of there. And your higher power will help with that too. He's never showed up face to face, you understand? But man, he's been close. Some big miracles and little miracles all over the place. My son John's been really struggling with his job. He was working in New York, fell in love with New York, and lost his job at Facebook, and BCG went after them, offered him a whole bunch of money to come back to Thailand. He agreed to do it, and then he really regretted it. I just got the beautiful letter from him saying, "Good luck tonight, Dad. I'm doing okay. I get it now. I mean, he's made a lot of money. He's got a hell of a resume. Why should he be dependent upon that shitty company?" But he's healthy. Can't that restore some of my regard for myself? I'm his dad. And I apologize for the part I've played in him needing to constantly achieve. That's one of my problems. That's a schema issue for me. I'm not really worthy of that, but you must keep striving. You've got to keep going.
Wow.
It's a hell of a question. I keep asking it. You know that. How do you have that to help at all?
Yeah, very much, very
I
much.
mean, it took me a long time to hate myself. It's going to take a little while to get over it.
Well said. What else?
Mike.
Ski trips are a big highlight experiential for Valiant, and the number one fear I hear is, I've never skied sober before. How am I going to do this? Could you talk a little bit about how you re-entered your hobbies and how you began to find joy in early recovery?
Yep, I really do have an answer to that. When I was with Payne Weber, one of my goals was to join the University Club, where a number of the brokers were all members in Columbus, a beautiful club. They had a squash court. So I started playing squash. And I'm still drinking. But I'm surrounded by people that really take very good care of themselves. They're very good athletes. One of them was the only two-time captain of the Princeton squash team. He was 20 years older than I. We became very close friends, traveled all over the country playing together. They weren't drunks. So even while I was still drinking, and in fact deteriorating, I was surrounded by people that really did take very good care of themselves. They were great athletes, great guys. A lot of them were very successful. So I had that community that was starting to gather. Not too many years later, I finally got sober. And that community was still there. And all at once, I discovered that sober, I was a lot better. I was stronger, and I didn't have a hangover, and I was starting to get over myself. And that carried on for 25 years. And some of the coolest people I've known in my lifetime, only one of them's left that Dan just talked to on the phone. Don Mills in Cincinnati was named the number 5 most significant coach in the history of the game. We were pals, and so I didn't do a lot of, well, that's not true. I just went back to Ohio to ski at this, I told you guys this, to ski at this little hill where I taught when I was 19. And there is a picture behind the bar of all these attractive girls sitting at the bar and me. I mean, this is 63 years ago, and here's my picture. I mean, I'm safe because, believe me, no one would recognize me. At the entrance, there's another picture of me. That's impossible. And what's the message? I don't really get it. I mean, what the message is, you're okay, Wags. You're okay, Wags. You were okay then. You were just on the wrong road.
Wow. So good, dude. So good.
Well, it doesn't feel like it. I'm sorry, I don't have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty overwhelmed by your sharing tonight. if
But
I'm
you
being
would say
honest.
that anyway.
No, no, I wouldn't. I mean, it's really special what you shared with us. Is there any other questions, or I don't want to belabor it, but this has been really, really special for us, man.
This is going to sound weird, but I wrote this a long time ago. If I can get it out. I want you to know that you are magnificent. This whole world, the mountains, the forests, the beaches and ocean, the sunshine that you love, they were all created for you. Never forget it. You are magnificent. Whether you were born to a rich family or a poor one, whether the world regards you as smart or beautiful or not, you are magnificent, and all mankind will be judged on its likeness to you. That's the truth. What we become through this journey is really something to be proud of. This journey you are on will reveal the presence of your higher power, a personal, real presence that is far beyond the theological definitions we grew up with, or maybe have dismissed. Your higher power is the source of your transformation, your recovery. It will be revealed to you in your friends, the groups in which you share, the miracles of forgiveness you will experience, and all sorts of surprises that await you if you will just pay attention. All you have to do is trust the process and keep going. I'm glad that's over. Thank you.